Hello everybody and welcome to another board game discussion video. Today's topic is about legacy games. Now for those of you who don't know, a legacy game is one that is played over the course of multiple sessions, and typically they'll have some kind of overarching plot that is occurring. In addition, as you play through, it'll actively be changing the board, the cards, the characters, all sorts of other different stuff. They have become very popular in the last few years, and I've done multiple videos on them, including another discussion video where I discuss them as play and burn games. Today though, I wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about the who, what, when, where, and how of legacy games. That is to say, making, building, and maintaining a legacy board game group. But that said, you guys know I love to hear from you, and I would love to hear anything that you guys have to say about the topic. Do you have a legacy group? If so, how do you maintain it? Do you still play with them? And please let me know anything and everything in the comments below. So just going right down the list, first and foremost, who? Who do you play a legacy game with? Well, one thing that I would highly recommend is gamers that you have already played other games with. You want to make sure that you play with people who are reliable, who get your sense of humor, who understand that games can be either serious or fun depending on your own personal opinion. Essentially people that you just get along with. You have to remember that these are going to be people you'll be playing with over the course of dozens of sessions potentially. So you really got to make sure that they're people that you already know, whether that's your friends or people that you have gamed with previously. So next up is what. That is to say, what legacy game are you going to play? There are a lot of options. I have my personal favorites, as I'm sure you guys do as well. The original ones are things like Risk Legacy as well as Pandemic Legacy Season 1. There are also ones like Time Stories and a bunch of other ones that have been added, namely things like Gloomhaven and a bunch of other really high fantasy ones. So something you have to consider and discuss with your fellow members is what kind of game do you want to play? Do you want to play something that's really intense and heavy like Gloomhaven, where you have a campaign mode essentially? And do you want to play something that's like Time Stories, where it's much more narrative and story driven? Or do you want to play something like Pandemic, where it's relatively short, but it has kind of a cool, very distinctive and decisive, not truth and consequences, but action and consequences for the players? There's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing it. So next up we have the when. That is to say, when are you going to play and how are you going to organize it? This can be many different things, and one thing that you have to consider is how your fellow group members are going to be able to meet up. That is to say, you can meet up and just play through the entire game in one weekend. You can play it once a week, once a month, whatever you want to have to do. The thing is that I recommend planning this in advance, and more importantly, keeping notes if you're going to have a long time between sessions. This is especially the case with really narrative storytelling, again like Time Stories and the campaign modes and things of that nature, because a lot of times people will forget what they were doing and why it was important and all of that kind of stuff. Next up is where. Where are you going to play the game? Are you going to play it at a local game store? Are you going to play it at somebody's house? What are you going to do about that? This really boils down to what people's schedules are, and that's something that's on you guys. Are you more comfortable playing at your home? Do you have an FLGS that can host you? If you're going to do the idea where you basically have a weekend marathon, it's probably best that you do it at somebody's house, because then you can more easily do snack breaks and stuff like that. It makes it a lot easier on everybody. But if you're only meeting once a week or once a month, then an FLGS might be the perfect place to go for it. Last but not least is how. And in this case, I wanted to sort of separate it into a couple of subcategories because this is really important. First and foremost is, how do you find people? Now, I mentioned at the beginning, you want to play with people who you already have a relationship, you've already gamed with, and you know that you get along with. But the problem then becomes, what if you don't really know anybody? Well, you've got a couple of options. First and foremost, with games like Gloomhaven and a few others, you can do them solo. Of course, there are advantages and disadvantages. Advantageously, you don't need anybody else. Disadvantageously, it's a lot more fun if you have more people, because you can have a lot better discussions, trading, and all that kind of stuff, and it's just more fun, and it really immerses you in the experience, at least in my opinion, a bit more. As far as actually finding people, there are a few good options. Here in the US at least, there are things like meetup.com, there are Facebook groups, Reddit groups, all sorts of different stuff. And the thing is, in general, if you're in a relatively large city, you should be able to find some group somewhere that meets up at somebody's house or an FLGS or something like that. If you have an FLGS near you, that is probably the best bet for you to go to. You can go there, talk to the proprietors of it, see if they've got a board game night, or just go in and see if anybody's interested in playing. I know it's really difficult because it can be tough to just walk up to people and be like, hey, do you want to play some Pandemic Legacy? It's just awkward and weird. So the thing is that you really don't want to give up, all right? You want to just take those baby steps, see who you can find, where they're at, and all that kind of thing. The great aspect about FLGSs is that even if you're international, I'm sure that there's a decent number of FLGSs all over the place. So I know that there are international stores that you'll be able to find. And on top of that, things like Facebook, and I don't know about Meetup per se, but there's plenty of options online where you can go and you can meet people so that you can get in touch with them and try to start a group. The next subsection with regard to how is the actual games themselves. And this can be a bit of a sticky situation, especially for me personally, because it talks about the finances. That is to say, who's going to buy the game? Is everybody going to pitch in? Is one person going to buy it? How is it going to work? This is really important when it comes to the bigger games like Gloomhaven, where you're talking about potentially spending $100 on a single game. Everybody's going to play it. Everybody takes advantage of it. Is it fair that everybody pays a share? In my opinion, yes. I think that everybody should pay a fair share towards a game that everybody is enjoying at that level. That is to say, everybody's going through the story, everybody's having that experience, and you're doing it as a group. That said, it's up to you. You might not want to have to make people pay, but at the same time, with a lot of these games, once it's used and played, you can't really play it anymore. So, there are a few other options as well. For my personal favorite, Time Stories, it has individual modules. So you can even have the idea of one person buys the main base game, and then everybody else just buys the modules as you need them. And that's actually what I did with my group. I happened to get a copy of Time Stories. I actually won it at a raffle, so it was very lucky on my part. And then essentially the rest of the group members, each one of them bought a module. It's great because it's less expensive than going in at all at once, especially with a game that you're not sure that everybody's going to like. And so it just worked out really, really well for all of us. But again, it's up to you exactly how you organize it. That said, it's more than enough rambling for me on the subject. Again, it's something that I've touched on in my top 5 and 10 videos. It's something that I've done discussions on before. Legacy games are cool. They are interesting. They've grown on me to a good extent, but I'm still a little bit iffy on them because you really do have to get that right group. And that's really why I wanted to do this particular video. And of course, as always, once again, please let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments below, because you know I love to hear from you. If you guys have a legacy group that you maintain and you play through a bunch of different games, or if you have different groups for different styles of legacy games, please let me know whatever it is down in the comments. That said, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my various social media pages, as well as my Patreon page, where you can interact with myself and my channel in a whole bunch of really fun ways. But with that, thank you very, very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.